Hey guys, welcome back to another JavaScript programming tutorial, and in this tutorial I'm going to be talking about loops and how to use them in JavaScript. So loops are basically another basic programming construct, and in JavaScript there's actually two basic types of loops. There's the for loop and the while loop, and then there's like 5 sub loops, if you could call them that. So basically there's three types of for loops, and then there's 2 types of while loop. But basically they're all basically the same thing, so I can just kind of show you guys the different types and you can see where to use them. So what I'm going to do is just create this over here. I'm just going to go over to here and open up our console. So the first type of loop I'm going to talk about is the basic for loop. Let's say we have a list, and let's just create a list here. So const list, and let's just put inside of here some items. So I'll have let's just have numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, actually no, I'll do something else to make it a bit more clear. So let's have animals. So we can have a cow, we can have a pig, we can have a sheep, what else? We can have like a horse, and also let's just have a zebra or something. Okay, so there's our list, and now let's try and loop through this list. So basic for loop is just going to be for and then your condition, but in our case we actually have to define a counter. So let's just create a counter called I, start that as 0, so it's going to start as at the 0, and then basically this is going to be our condition. So we're going to repeat this until I is not equal to list.length, and then when it is equal to list.length it's actually going to break out of this, and then every iteration we're going to add 1 to I. So that's a basic for loop, and you can see we actually just get an index called I, and it's just going to be the index of the list item. So we can just do something like console.log list I, and that should actually give us the elements in order. So that's the first type, pretty simple, and you can basically make this anything. Like if I wanted to repeat this 10 times, you could do something like why I is not 10, and then if I run this, you can see it's actually going to give us 5 undefineds because our list only has 5 items. But yeah, we can just do something like this, and then it gives us numbers from 0 to 9, so 10 numbers. But yeah, so that's a basic for loop, pretty simple, just gives you the index. Well, not, it just gives you anything. You can like kind of do whatever you want with it. So the next type of for loop is actually the for in loop. So this is basically similar to that, but just shorthand. So let's just say we want to just kind of do the exact same thing. We can do something like for let I in list, and now what this is going to do is just loop through the list and return the index. So we can do the same thing. We can do console.log list I, like that, and you can see it's going to return these items again. So pretty self-explanatory again, just goes through the list and gives the item of each index. And then we also have the final for loop, which is the for of loop. So here we can have for, and then we can actually set this to const, and then we can have either animal or element or whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to call it animal because it list of animals. So for const animal of list, and this is actually going to return the element rather than the index. So we can actually just console.log animal, and again this is a lot more useful because, well, not a lot more useful, but a bit cleaner and a bit nicer to work with, because it's actually makes your code a lot more readable than having something like the first one or second one where you also have to use the index. So yeah, those are the basic for loops. Those are the basic 3, but you can really use them interchangeably. Like, it's just to make your code look nicer. And then we can move on to the while loops. So the first while loop is really basic. It's just while the condition, when the condition is true, it's going to carry on, and then as soon as the condition becomes false, it breaks out of this. So in our case, let's say we want to loop through the list. First we'd have to define a counter, and then we could do while I is not equal to list.length, and then we'd also have to increment the counter at the bottom, and then we could just do the same thing that we did in the for loops. So we could just console.log list I, and that's going to give us our items in our list, and that's our basic while loop. Simple. And you'll notice if I actually don't increment this, it's actually going to create an infinite loop, and I'm not going to do it because then this would cause it to crash, but just know that it's going to cause an infinite loop. So whenever you're using a while loop with a counter, you usually want to you need to always make sure you increment it. But basically most of the times why you're going to be using the while loop is because you want to actually modify, or not modify, you want to delete an item from this list. So for example, let's say we want to delete pig. What we could do is we could do if list I is equal to pig, then we could do list.splice I, and that's going to delete it, and then we want to make sure we don't actually increment I if we deleted it. So yeah, that's mainly the reason why you would use a while loop, because you can't really do that in a for loop because it's still going to increment the counter whether you delete something or not. So at the end, if we just print our list, it appears that we haven't. I do not know what happened there, unless I do. This is meant to be a capital letter. Yeah. So now you can see that we've got rid of that pig item, and yeah. So the final type of list is the do until or do while loop, and this is basically the same thing as the while, but it actually repeats it once and then it checks. So in a regular while loop, for example here, I'm just gonna put this back like it was, and we'll just do something like console.log list I, like that. So in this one, what it's going to do is it's going to check the condition first, checks condition first, and then it's going to run this. So if we set I to 5, which is the list's length, nothing's going to print because it checks this condition. This condition is false because 5 is actually the list length, so it's not going to do any of this code. Whereas if we had the do until loop, so let's just create a new pointer. I'm just going to call it A, and let A, and then we'll just call A and put that there. So you can see it's giving us an error because we need to have a while statement. So this is just do while, and it's going to do this code first and then check condition after repeating once. So it always does this code once, and then while A is not equal to list dot length. So now you can see it did the same thing, but the difference is that it checks the condition at the end, whereas this checks at the start. So if I were to set A to 5, it's still going to, oh, I do not want to make sure it doesn't crash, because otherwise, yeah. But basically what happened there was we set I to 5, it didn't do that, it did that, and then it actually added one to A, which made it 6, and then A wasn't the list's length, which made it just carry on in this infinite loop, which is actually what's causing this. But yeah, that's basically it for loops. Just ignore this. This is just caused by the infinite loop I was talking about earlier, and soon this is going to crash, but you don't need to see that. So yeah, those are basically the loops in JavaScript. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in a future tutorial. Bye!